sort of secret meetings, people coming in and out of his building where his office is now, talking to folks who might be 2020 presidential hopefuls, giving some advice, some guidance perhaps, thoughts on the future of the Democratic Party. He has met with at least 9 potential candidates so far, including major names like former Vice President Joe Biden, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. Here now, Charlie Hurt, former columnist for The Washington Times and a Fox News contributor, and Juan Williams, co-host of The Five and a Fox News political analyst. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you with us. So, Juan, let me start with you. What do you think this tells us about the potential role of the former president in all of this?
Well, I think in a sense he's coming out of hiding now. The Obama people say of course he's talking to fellow Democrats, but the way the news was framed today is that these are potentially the people who would be the Democratic Party's nominee in 2020. I think the key here is that maybe the president is operating in that way, Martha, but he doesn't want it to be the case that people perceive that the establishment, the Democratic Party establishment, is picking the candidate. That hasn't worked for them in these Democratic primaries this year, leading up to the midterms, and it would seem like a heavy hand. Remember, they picked Hillary Clinton last time.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable that the former president would want to have these meetings, you know, sort of off the radar. I couldn't help but think about all the people coming in and out of Trump Tower and how different these two men are. Not that the situations are that similar, but everyone remembers those moments, the video. We're going to see it in a second, I promise. Everybody walking in and out of the building, and there were cameras set up everywhere. Charlie, very different men in how they go about their politics.
Indeed. Trump likes a show. He likes he likes to draw it out. He likes the Klieg lights. They could not be more different. But you know, with Barack Obama, you know, we've seen his involvement in partisan politics since he left office has been fairly unusual. You know, whether he's weighing in on Obamacare or other policy things. But as Juan said, you know, I guess it's not to be all that surprising. Shouldn't be all that surprising, considering the fact that the president is sitting there watching so much of his agenda get torn out by root and branch by this president. Of course, a lot of it is easily done by whatever it was, the pen and the phone, because a lot of Obama's agenda was put in by a pen and a phone.
Unfortunately, that's the way a lot of presidents have to work these days. They have a tough time getting through a lot of major legislation. I just want to point out, you know, some of the people that have not been there: Terry McAuliffe, Christian Gillibrand, Kamala Harris. Cory Booker hasn't visited the office since last year. Juan, I don't know if that's significant or not, but does this tell us anything about who the president prefers?
Well, it's kind of early because, you know, I think we're still trying to understand exactly how significant it is he's talking to all these folks, although I think many of them are contenders. But I'll tell you one thing that stands out to me is if you're thinking about who is the leader of the Democratic Party at this moment, and lots of people, especially Republicans, are saying there is no leadership, there's an absence of leadership, an absence of message. Well, guess what? It's not Nancy Pelosi. It's not Chuck Schumer. Here we have Barack Obama asserting himself as the man who's fighting Republican gerrymandering, fighting for voter registration, leading into the midterms, and I think now potentially asserting himself as the man who will select the party's nominee in 2020.
I mean, there's no doubt that his support will be huge for whoever ultimately gets it. And, you know, Bill Clinton is looking like he's just disappearing from the scene, and comments like this are not going to help him.
I think the norms have really changed in terms of what you can do to somebody against their will, how much you can crowd their space, make them miserable at work.
Oh, boy.
Wow. I don't think that's so good, Martha.
I don't know how that didn't get more attention. He said it several days ago. I hadn't seen it until this morning, but how much you can do to somebody against their will, Juan?
Well, I just think that's offensive. You can't do it. You shouldn't do anything to anybody against their will, but I don't. I mean, there's no change over time on standards. That's just wrong.
Charlie, quick thought, we got to go.
Well, you know, and of course, it's important to remember that this is exactly the sort of behavior in the White House, in the Oval Office, that a lot of Clinton's detractors deplored about him at the time. And you know, so it comes as little surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I think he's putting an interesting mark on his legacy over the last week. Gentlemen, thank you. Great to see you.